Hey guys, welcome back to the Stargazerman channel. Today I'm going to review for you the new Seestar S30 from ZWO. The S30 is the second smart scope from ZWO in their Seestar range, the first being the larger aperture S50 released last year. I'll cover everything from the basics right up to how to get the best images out of this scope. Let's check it out. The S30 is an achromatic refractor with a 30mm aperture. It's got 150mm focal length, which is f5 focal ratio. So that gives a larger field of view, larger than the S50, which is actually perfect for beginners. Okay, so let's do a real quick unboxing. Really well packaged inside. We have Seestar, your handheld observatory. Really love that. And next you'll find some really cool ZWO stickers, which are Seestar S30 on there. Pretty cool. You can trick out your scope. And then inside the main event, we have a really sleek looking new designed box. So the S50 had a kind of a harder polyurethane type of box. So this one is more like a regular kind of camera box or camera case that you would normally get. I'm just going to take that out. So as you can see, I reckon it's about the same size as, a modern DSLR camera bag. I have a few from Canon, from Sony. They're not dissimilar. You wouldn't really know there's a telescope inside here. So open it up, and before we show you the scope, you obviously have some instructions, a little neat place to keep the really tiny solar filter, and I'll talk about all of that later on. And the next part obviously is the tripod and the charging cable, standard USB charging cable. I want to quickly talk about the tripod before I get to the telescope. So I've seen this tripod shown before, and what I didn't realize until I got it is it's actually metal, and it's pretty sturdy, I have to say. It's a neat little tripod. It weighs practically nothing. I'll put all the details of the specs as I'm talking through this review on the screen, but super light and handy. And it's got a really, I'll take out the cable because I obviously have been using this, but if you look in here, you have a really neat place to keep it, nice and safe. And nestled really safely and securely in here is the Seestar S30. And I gotta say, when I opened it up, I couldn't really believe how small this thing is. I mean, I have the S50, and it's not that much bigger, I suppose, but this just feels really small and super light. So there we go. That's what's in the box, the new Seestar S30 from ZWO. And let's set it up, see what we can get from this thing. Total weight of the S30, including accessories in the case, is just 4 pounds or 1.8 kilograms. It's genuinely incredibly small and portable. I've taken it hiking and even packed it in a carry-on bag for flights, making it ultra portable solution for astronomy and astrophotography. So you may have seen the Seestar S30 and thought, how do you actually level this? There's no way to level it. You don't, is the short answer. You don't need to level this. I mean, you don't need to level it crazily accurately. The more accurate it is, obviously, the better the stacking is going to be. But if you just level it by eye, it should be totally fine. And as you can see, it's super fast to attach this. There you go, ready to put on a flat surface. So you may also see that I have brought my Manfrotto tripod with me, and I've tested out the tripod that comes with the Seestar S30, and it's perfectly fine. I just like to have my telescopes raised up a bit higher just to save my back, and any 3/8 thread will work here. You can also use some of the levelers that you see. They've got the little 3 rings on them that you can adjust to make it level. I wouldn't go crazy trying to level it super accurately because Seestar software takes care of all of that. So the first object I'm going to image is the sun, and after you have connected the Seestar to the Seestar app and opened the arm, you'll want to install the solar filter. Now this couldn't be easier. It's literally a magnetic attachment, so pop the solar filter on the front and you're good to go. Didn't have any fears about it falling off at all. So next, if you go to the app and you click on stargazing or sun, and then click on go to, the Seestar then will say, have you got your solar filter installed? Just make sure it's installed before it goes and searches for the sun. Now this is where the Seestar S30 and the S50 differ, because with the S50 you would have to make sure it was level within a couple of degrees, but the S30 obviously accounts for that, and so you don't have to do that. It does find the sun sometimes, but other times it asks you to manually center the sun. And this is where the intelligent dual camera system really comes into play, because you can switch over to the wide field view. This is a great upgrade from the S50 that didn't have a wide field camera built into the scope. So while you can capture epic scenery shots, you can also use it to hone in on the object that you're trying to locate, be that the sun or the moon or an object that's far off in the distance. Then I used the slew control to center the sun as best I could, and once I was happy I hit track, and when I hit track it asked me, was the sun in the center, yes, no? I selected yes, and then it said sync succeeded, and it started to track the sun. Tracking remained perfectly accurate throughout the entire session. I then focused by tapping on the sun and then tapping on the autofocus feature. And while there weren't many sunspots on the sun this day, it did manage to find focus really well. On this particular morning, the sun was quite low on the horizon, so I wanted to play around with the brightness. And I did this by tapping on the plus minus icon, which allows you to adjust the brightness to your liking. Happy with these levels, I hit the white circle and took this image of the sun. The result is a very respectable sharp image showing the details of the sunspots. Next, I decided to try the 2x feature, and this increased the magnification and I got this image. And then lastly, the 4x feature, which again zooms in more, and I was able to snap this shot. At this magnification, the image starts to fall apart. So for most use cases, you would only really use the 1x, possibly 2x, depending on what you're trying to capture. Next, I decided to capture a raw 10-second video in 1x, and the Seestar has a really big internal memory of 64 gigabytes, so nothing to worry about in terms of storage. And once you save down this video, you can transfer it over to your computer and do some extra editing on the images captured. Next up was our closest neighbor, the moon, and again, finding the target was pretty simple. You literally just go to the menu, select the moon, go gazing, and then it will automatically slew to where it believes that the moon is located in the sky. As you can see here, I have got both the wide angle lens and the telephoto lens in operation, so we can see the Seestar is now slewing to where it believes the moon is, and it does a very decent job of trying to locate it, but again, it wants me to manually locate the moon within the field of view, so that's perfectly easy and fine to do by just using the slew controls, and you can use either fast or slow settings. I did find the slow sometimes was very slow and the fast was very fast, so maybe in a new update a suggestion might be to have an adjustable slew speed, but as it stands right now, perfectly fine to use. So once I have the moon centered in the field of view, I then hit the track button and the moon automatically is tracked now by Seestar. So you can also hit on enable target correction in the top right, and what this will do is it will also make sure that the object that you have selected always stays in the center field of view, which is really useful, especially for the planets, etc. So exactly the same as the sun, after I had focused and played around with the brightness and adjusted the levels, I took these 2 shots, which I have to say I'm really impressed with. For such a small aperture, really did a great job of capturing all the details on the moon. But this little unit comes, as we said earlier, with 2 lenses, and this is really cool because you can now switch between telephoto and landscape. And when I went to test this out near an estuary I live near, sometimes would scan down the estuary at the end of the river towards a refinery and see some of the ships and the boats coming into dock. And I was really impressed with how well the Seestar handled the magnification on these. And you can see here as I'm panning around, I'm getting very sharp, clear images of the scene in the distance. Here is the resulting video and also the resulting photograph. I measured the distance between my observing point and where this ship was, and it's 10 miles or about 16 kilometers, which is really astounding when you think how well the Seestar handles that distance. For people that are into nature watching or bird watching, this unit really does come into its own. I could easily track some of the waders very far out on the mud plains, and again I could use both the wide angle lens and the zoom lens to find my target, and then I was able to then select the target and request the Seestar to basically track it, and it did a really great job of following these little birds around. The user interface is really intuitive, and you can quickly and easily switch between photo mode and video mode. The 4K video turned out really well and looked very good on a large screen. Being set up near an airport also allowed me to track some birds of a different type, and it was really great fun trying to lock onto some of the higher altitude planes as they passed over. Again, the dual lenses really helped to be able to find the target. Now, I had some success doing this manually, but it's very tricky to try and keep the plane in the field of view, and this is where you can utilize the target track feature. And using the wide field of view, I was able to point the telephoto view in the path of the plane and then select the object with the target track. And boom, you have a fully tracked shot that is very, very respectable indeed, and much steadier than I thought it would turn out when I was looking at it on my phone. So I used the same technique to try and capture some of the planes that were taking off close by, and this was a little bit trickier because the planes were moving quite a lot faster. But again, utilizing the dual screens and pointing the telephoto lens in the area where I believed the plane was going to pass through proved to be a good technique, and after a couple of tries I was able to actually do this literally every time I wanted to track a plane. So as you can see here, the Seestar is quite happily tracking this plane along, and this is the resulting video. After nightfall, it was time for some astrophotography. Right, so I'm going to test out the scope in a real world environment, and I'm taking it with me tonight to an observing location that I go to that's next to a lake, and the seeing conditions tonight look really, really good. It's about -1 degree Celsius at the moment, completely clear skies. It's forecast to stay clear all night. Temperatures are to drop to about -5 degrees Celsius, and there's 0 wind, which means that there could be a chance of some fog. Hopefully that stays off. I also had a quick look at the jet stream, and there's no jet stream over the country at the moment, so we've got completely clear skies, 0 wind, no jet stream. Couldn't ask for a better night's observing conditions, and the lake is about a portal 3 or 4, so yeah, we can really put the scope through its paces tonight. So I'm excited to see what the results are. The S30's main strength is astrophotography, and in deep sky imaging mode you can select objects from the Sky Atlas or the Tonight's Best list. With its fully automated go-to tracking system, the S30 locates, tracks, and then begins to photograph the objects like Andromeda Galaxy or the Orion Nebula, etc. Using the dual band filter for emission nebula or the sky glow filter for galaxies and star clusters, you can capture incredible details even from light polluted areas. The highly sensitive Sony IMX662 sensor, which is an upgrade from the previous sensor in the S50, ensures really vibrant, detailed images. And let's check out the results. So the first object I went for was M42, or the Orion Nebula. Now I'll show you the steps that I took in relative real time. Some parts I will speed up because they take quite a while, but I just wanted to walk you through what happens after you've located the object. So the initial setup requires you to do some autofocusing on the stars. If you haven't already done that, then when you locate the object, just hit autofocus to make sure that the object is completely in focus before you start your imaging run. If you've used your Seestar during the day on the sun or the moon, then it's probably going to be close enough in focus, but still worthwhile focusing on some bright stars before you go to your target. Once it's in focus, you can then decide whether you want to have the filter on or off, depending on the object that you're shooting and obviously how dark or light polluted your surroundings are. Happy with this setup, I started the imaging run, and you can start to see the Seestar begins taking 10-second shots and then stacking them one on top of the other. Now, sometimes the Seestar will do some extra calibration to align itself perfectly in the sky. It'll also take some dark shots that it saves internally, and it uses these as a reference of what the noise looks like on your sensor. And it uses this as a reference to subtract that noise from the overall stacked result. Generally, the longer you spend on an object to accumulate lights, the better. And sometimes you might see a warning that comes up to say that the image was discarded. This is because there might have been slight star trailing or a satellite passed through the frame of the field of view. As this was just an initial test, I decided to end the run and see what the resulting image would be like. And to see these, you just go to My Photos and select the object. And as you can see, the Seestar did a really incredible job of capturing lots of the faint detail in the nebula itself. And the stars are quite pinpoint. In fact, I wasn't expecting them to be as good as this, but this little aperture and sensor have really knocked it out of the park. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is how can you make this image look a little better? Well, one of the really cool features that Seestar has is AI Denoise. And to select this, what you do is you go to the Seestar folder and then find the image that you had just shot. And there's a little magic wand icon up in the top right hand corner, and what this will do is it spends more time basically subtracting all of the noise from the image to give you a much clearer result. And as you can see, this is miles different from the original that we ended up with, and it also has a really simple interface where you can do some changes to the contrast, to the brightness, or to the saturation. So you can do a little tweaking to see what the differences are going to make. It also has a very nice feature, which is comparison. So up in the top right hand corner you have comp, and you can click on this and you can see the original versus what you've ended up with. Now, I really love this feature. I think one of the struggles that a lot of newcomers have is how they can actually make these images look as best as they can. There are ways to take all those images into your computer and then use separate software to stack them and to tweak them. But I really think that this has solved this issue for quite a lot of newcomers, because you can just take that image, do a little bit of tweaking, and then select the denoise feature, and you've got a very respectable image then that you can share with your friends, family, social media, whatever. Very impressed with this feature. So here's the final result with ridiculously short integration time and only some slight tweaking. Very respectable image indeed. On to the Andromeda Galaxy, which was my next target. So after hitting M31 and go stargazing, the Seestar took off and went to track the object and found it pretty quickly. Have to say, no issues with the Seestar. Once it has aligned on your first target, it'll probably nail the next sequence of targets after that. So I was super interested to find out what this new Mosaic feature was like, because the field of view of the Seestar S30 is a little bit bigger than the S50, but it also has this Mosaic feature where you can actually increase the total area of the sky that you want to image. And for something like the Andromeda Galaxy, it's really cool to be able to, I suppose, tweak the rotation and how big the image you need it to be to fit the whole galaxy into the frame. So as you can see here, I'm using the framing feature to angle and to zoom in to get it centered as best as I can. And it also then tells you how long you should expect this to run for to be able to capture all of the information and data it needs to stack this entire image together. Be prepared to spend a little bit longer than the suggested shooting time, because this is not accounting for times where a satellite will pass through the frame or there might be slight star trailing. If you are shooting and there is a risk of dew or frost, then make sure to switch on the internal dew heater, which is a really neat function, so you can shoot all night long and not worry about the lens fogging over. Now, I have seen on some forums and Facebook posts people questioning, have I actually initiated the framing mode? Trust in the process that once you have it selected and you go back to shooting mode, that after a couple of stacks of the initial images, it'll then start to lay out the result as you see here. So it's really interesting to see it building up the image like this until you get a final shot that fills the frame, something like this. A really nicely framed image of M31. Eager to see what the AI Denoise feature would make of this. I went to Seestar, then to Stargazing Albums, selected M31 and hit the AI Denoise icon. And then, as before, I tweaked the brightness and the contrast and the saturation as best I could to really try to tease out as much detail from the image as possible. Now, don't be worried about making any changes, because you can always hit reset and also then hit the comparison to see what the difference is from the original to what you have ended up with. And I settled on a slight increase in some brightness and a little bit of saturation to get this image. Really impressive result out of the box. And then you can import into Lightroom or any other external imaging program to really make any other edits that you like. So at this point of the evening, it was starting to get really cold. It hit about -5. Some of the other guys that I was imaging with had decided to pack up. I had brought a spare battery just for backup in case the Seestar's internal battery didn't last the night, but no fears there. It actually managed to last the whole night without having to top it up. The second last object on my list for the night was the North American Nebula. This is a superb object to image, as it is a large emission nebula found in the Cygnus constellation, and it glows due to ionization of interstellar gas caused by radiation of the hot young stars surrounding it. And as you can see, it's the perfect candidate to use the framing feature on the S30. I have tried to image this with the S50, and it's just too big to fit in the field of view. So you can see here, the blue box is the original size of the sensor, and then you can increase the field of view to capture practically all of the object. So set aside plenty of time to be able to image the object in its entirety. And while you can extend the exposure time to 30 seconds each, ZWO recommend that you stay with the default 10 seconds. And in my testing, I would find that I would lose a little bit more frames because of star trailing or satellites passing through the frame when the exposure was longer. So sticking to the 10 seconds really makes sense for this type of scope. So here's the result after 1 hour integration. Pretty cool. So I was really eager again to see what the Denoise feature would make with this data, and it takes about a minute to run the comparison and do a little bit of tweaking. Ironically, there wasn't much difference between the original image and the denoised image, and I put this down to the sky conditions for the evening were really incredibly good, and also the area that I was shooting from was quite dark and very little light pollution. At around 4 hours in, the cold was starting to take its toll and I had to top up the battery a little bit. My next target was the Rosette Nebula. Another fantastic emission nebula. This is in Monoceros, and again I extended the field of view by using the framing feature to capture the entire nebula in the field of view. Once again, the Seestar performed flawlessly, captured the image exactly as I had set out to, and really picked up a lot of that red color from the hydrogen alpha areas on the nebula itself. A fantastic result for such a small scope. Pinpoint stars, lovely color, fantastic detail. At this point, I was so eager to keep going. I wanted to try a really difficult target. The Witch's Head Nebula, which is a faint reflection nebula at magnitude 13. It's got a lovely bluish colour due to the light from Rigel reflecting off the interstellar dust around it, which gives it its distinctive witch's head shape. But disaster, I forgot to turn off the dual band filter I had set previously on the other two targets. And after some time, when I realized there was no nebula showing in the image, I cancelled the imaging run, reset, made sure to leave the filter off and started again. And with just 52 minutes of integration time, I captured incredible detail in the nebula. A small adjustment of levels was all it took to tease out the intricate structures of this faint object, showcasing the amazing potential of this little scope. So, after nearly 5 hours of deep sky imaging, the S30 was still good to go, but I was too cold to continue on. The practically zero breakdown time was really appreciated, leaving the unit in the case open to avoid any condensation. A successful night's imaging done. My final thoughts on this scope are, it's a super compact, user-friendly and versatile tool that delivers really impressive results out of the box for its size and price. Whether you're a beginner or someone looking for an ultra-portable astrophotography setup, the Seestar S30 offers incredible value and awesome potential. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, clear skies and keep looking up.